Everyone, and thank you so much for sticking with us. As promised, I am today joined by Special Envoy to the Premier and internationally recognized UN Ambassador, Mr. Benito Wheatley. Mr. Wheatley, welcome back to our platform, and thank you for your time.
Ron, thank you for inviting me to this table.
Absolutely. A lot has taken place over the past few days, of course. Most importantly, the people of the territory had an incident-free and safe election process, and at the end of it, now we have where a new government, some assembled of former members as well as some new members have been sworn in successfully. I want to get your take on the election process. First and foremost, you obviously came home as a registered voter of the 8, so you got to participate in the process as well. But after reviewing and observing, what are your thoughts essentially on our journey to elections?
Well, Ron, firstly, the election process was a model of democracy at work. People went to the polls peacefully, they voted, I did, you did, and we were able to cast our vote for the persons that we thought would represent us best. The BVI as a democracy has been since 1950, and that tradition continues. I would like to congratulate the Supervisor of Elections, Ms. Sherry Griffin, for the exceptional work that she did along with her team. They are doing a great job, and I think it bodes well for the future.
Of course. Now that that has taken place, as I mentioned, we had the swearing in of the new government yesterday, and there was some a bit of interesting happenings as it relates to securing the majority. Were you surprised at all? What are your thoughts on the compilation of the new government?
Well, firstly, congratulations to Premier Dr. the Honorable Natalia Wheatley and all of the new members of the government. They hopefully will do a fantastic job. They have a range of persons that have skills. Some of them are new, most of them have returned. So hopefully that will all work out well. Following the election, there was an inconclusive result. No one party got 7 seats and therefore could not form the government on their own. So therefore, they had to come up with a coalition or alliance of some kind to form the government. Now, the Virgin Islands Party won the most seats. They had 6, then PVIM had 3, NDP had 3, and PU had 1. So the configuration was one of 2 things. Either the 3 parties that had 3, 3, and 1 formed a government and with the 7 members there, or one of those parties joined the Virgin Islands Party, successful candidates, to form a government, because all you need is 7.
That's correct.
And in this particular case, Mrs. Lawrence Smith joined the Virgin Islands Party in an alliance to form the new government.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about a new era, essentially, of political representation. Do you feel as though we have gotten to the point where we are segueing to a new era of representation politically?
Well, the foundation is there, and this is part of the result of the COI process, the reforms that have been undertaken. There were 2 key reforms that will change politics as we know it. The assistance grants provided via the House of Assembly have now been moved to the Department of Social Development. Constituents will no longer be able to simply go to their representative to ask for financial support for whatever reason. They will be directed to social development. And I think we cannot underestimate how important the assistance grants were to the political process.
I agree.
The other aspect is this, that assistance grants via the ministries of government themselves are no longer, they are no longer done automatically by a minister. There'll have to be very exceptional circumstances for those types of assistance programs to be conducted. But this changes everything. If you are a representative of a district, or an at-large representative, you now have to work with the government on an agenda to deliver for your district and your constituents. The opposition members will have to work with the government if they want anything done in their ministries. The government will have to work in all the districts via an actual agenda to deliver results. If you are in the House of Assembly, you will have to make your case by advocacy for your constituents. You're not going to be able to simply get support because you can offer financial assistance to an assistance program. That's over now. So this changes everything, and the voter will have to adjust to this new reality. The institutions of government are what will have to support constituents who need help, not politicians directly, and that's a big change for us.
I'm happy that you mentioned that, and of course we were going to get to the COI recommendations. There were some persons who were under the impression that perhaps that particular recommendation in pertains to the assistance grants may or should not have been agreed upon based on the culture that has already been presented and shared with our territory of residents being able to go to their district representation. It has been said that it weakens their representation or their ability to represent, and also putting additional strain on the social development department. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's be clear. The social development department has always had that function.
Correct.
We ran a kind of hybrid social assistance program in the BVI where we have the House of Assembly and the representatives providing support. We had the Department of Social Development, and we also had the ministries of government. So now it's all been shifted to social development, and there's no doubt that there will have to be some capacity building to be able to administer that assistance. What's useful about going through social development is that they have established very specific criteria for who really should receive this assistance based on their need. So means testing is going to be a part of the process. And UNICEF, which is a UN agency that looks at issues like social assistance, has assisted the Ministry of Health and Social Development with establishing best practices in distributing social assistance. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Okay.
And I think that what we have to adjust to is that persons who are used to going to their representative to get that assistance will have to now begin going to social development and getting more comfortable with that idea and that process.
I want to continue on the COI recommendations and the effective implementation of that. Most recently, Governor Ranking expressed his sentiments that the recommendations and the implementation of them were too slow. Many persons have echoed these sentiments that the timeline itself was unrealistic. The government of the Virgin Islands continues to implement the various recommendations in stages. Of course, that is overseen by the office that was prepared and delivered to monitor that progress. Overall, what is your thought on how we've been handling, particularly as a government, but then as a country, because the civil servants play a real role in the implementation as well. Offices have been affected. What are your thoughts on the COI recommendations and the implementation of them to this point?
Well, the framework document for the agreement of those reforms and their implementation was agreed between the UK and the BVI. And both sides agreed to it because they wanted to see the reforms implemented swiftly. So the timelines were agreed, but the delivery took a lot longer than anticipated. I think not just on the government side, but even those that the governor is responsible for, some of those were delayed. So I think there's a clear understanding that things have lagged behind and that we have to speed up. And speeding up will be a good thing. The one key element that we have to keep in mind is public consultation. So while we want the process to go swiftly, and it should, we cannot go faster than democracy will allow. So once everyone understands that, I think we'll be able to move forward smoothly.
I did forget to ask you on the aspect of the election process. We saw a pretty low voter turnout. The voter apathy, I believe, essentially was low. There was lots of hesitation, mistrust. What do you think attributed to that, and what do you say to the residents who are of the opinion that it is not only not necessary for them to vote, but that their vote perhaps doesn't count?
So there are a few things here. One, it was a bruising campaign season. I think everyone knows that there was some perhaps harsh things said
Indeed.
and other things. That may have actually turned off people from voting, especially young people. When we campaign, or anyone campaigns, you know, bashing is one thing, and you may get some support there. But when you actually campaign on what you can do to help and improve things, I think that's much more attractive to persons who would like to vote. So that was important. The backdrop to the election was, you know, all of the challenges that we've had over the past 10 months and prior. And the COI, all of the things that have been revealed, that may have left a bad taste in people's mouths.
Okay.
And perhaps they felt that the political system isn't working for them and it's not worth actually voting. But the right to vote in this country is something that was fought for by our foreparents. As I mentioned earlier, the first election was in 1950. We have tried to maintain that tradition, and we have to understand how important it is
Indeed.
to participate in the political system in a democracy. To do that, one of the key things is you have to vote, especially if you want things to improve.
Totally agree with you. Now, one of the topics, of course, that has been of great concern to Virgin Islanders and residents is the relationship with the United Kingdom. Of course, the implementation of the COI seems to play a huge role in that. It was stated recently by Governor Ranking and persons involved that once the recommendations are met, the Ordering Council should be removed by 2014. I'm missing the particular month, but that was the timeline. I'm going to ask you in simple terms, Mr. Wheatley, because I think it's a question that a lot of the Virgin Islands community really wants to know. What is it what is it that the UK wants? Not only from the BVI, but its leaders and residents. Okay,
well, let me just mention one thing before I answer that. What the minister said in his letter, that's Lord Goldsmith,
yes,
the UK Overseas Terrorism Minister, is that the Ordering Council that's being held in reserve would be lifted by May 2024 if reforms have been implemented successfully. Perhaps even before that, if things are satisfactory. What does the UK want? Well, let's just kind of take a step back and understand what the relationship is. The British Virgin Islands was a colony of the UK. And after the Second World War, it was understood by the international community that colonialism was not a proper and fitting form of governance. It took away the dignity of the people who were subject to it. And so therefore, they made a decision to transition these colonies from being colonies to something else politically that would uphold their dignity, specifically self-government. That was the something else. So self-government of some kind. And there are options for that via the process of self-determination, its independence, integration, or free association. So the UK has a responsibility as the administering power of the overseas territories. This is what the UN provided for post-World War II. And part of their responsibility is to see us develop to the point where we can decide what our final political status is. So they were supposed to provide self-government, help us to develop it, and so that's an ongoing responsibility. So what does the UK want? Well, what they're supposed to want is to see us grow and develop to the point where we can govern our own affairs and then make a decision as to our final political status. That's what they should want. So the process that we're going through now is supposed to be about improving governance. It's supposed to be about getting better systems in place. It's supposed to be about transparency, checks and balances. This is what it's supposed to be about. Now, the tragedy of all of this is not really simply about what the UK wants or what they've said. These are things that we should want for ourselves. I believe many and most people do.
Most importantly, yes.
And we should have taken steps a long time ago to ensure that all of the right systems, procedures, and everything that defines good governance was in place. However, we did veer off course. I mean, we've had decent governance for many, many years, many decades. That's how we've improved the quality of life here, the standard of living. It's not perfect, but it's better than many places. But we can do much better. And we veered off because we focused more so on the political cycle. We are now in a place where we can put those things in place. We can embed them in our governance. Things like freedom of information.
Yes.
We need to have a Freedom of Information Act because people have the right to know what's happening inside the government. Of course, there are some areas where things must remain confidential, but when you are spending taxpayers' money, making decisions for taxpayers,
they need to be properly informed.
They need to be properly informed, so the information should be available. It's their choice if they choose to read it or not, but it should be available. So the UK BVI partnership has to be one that helps us to establish those institutions and to strengthen our governance. It should not simply be dictatorial or imbalanced, but a cooperative partnership in which we both mutually benefit. The UK meets its responsibilities as the administering power, and the BVI benefits as one of the overseas territories that has self-government and will continue on the path of self-determination until we can determine our final status.
Understood, and thank you so much for that response. Viewers, again, we're joined by Special Envoy to the Premier and internationally recognized UN Ambassador, Mr. Benito Wheatley. We are discussing, of course, all things election-related, COI recommendations, our relationship with the United Kingdom, and most importantly, the way forward in order to chart a much better trajectory for the territory. We'll be right back after a quick commercial break.
Yo, everything good, Dad?
Aye. This thing got me one way, Daddy.
What you mean?
Ever since I hook up with this thing, can't eat, I can't sleep. This is the first thing I touch it when I reach home.
What you really? Hey, this ain't like you, know.
Dad, this thing got me staying home, keeping out that trouble me.
Wow. What your name is?
Shit. I talking about my CCT life.
Don't worry about missing your favorite series, sports, news, and local programming. Come to CCT today and sign up for CCT Live to access over 80 channels. CCT Live. Bring it home.
1 month free trial turn into 5. 5 months turn into, well, you know I huff. I watching ball. I been watching football. Dad, Nickelodeon, Paw Patrol. I am hooked. Hook, I tell you.
Is that my lunch? Is that my lunch?
We're like the coworker that doesn't eat your lunch.
I'm John. I'm John.
CG Insurance. Good like that.
Kids, let's go! Sean, what are you doing?
I solved it. We'll buy our life insurance policy from this company and then go over here and get our home insurance. Then get our motor policy from right over here.
Or we could just get everything with CG Insurance. Save a lot of money and effort.
They do it all? Even pensions?
Even pensions.
We're like a husband that doesn't overcomplicate everything. CG Insurance. Good like that.
Andy, turns out I'm allergic to the Australian veggie spread.
Ooh, thankfully CG will cover you anywhere in the world. Remember when I went to Australia for my title fight? Trust me when I say you do not want to get in the ring with a kangaroo. It wasn't until my victory dinner with the Sultan that I realized top shelf caviar doesn't agree with me. But I was covered. Anyway, I gotta go. I'm teaching your cousin how to use a flamethrower. Woohoo!
Medical cover anywhere in the world. CG Insurance. Good like that.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for sticking with us. Mr. Wheatley, before we took a commercial break, you mentioned really, and mistakes are inevitable in any administration or for any institution. Reflecting on the last 4 years, is there anything that could have been improved on a policy level, a government level, and what encouragement would you give to the newly sworn-in government of the Virgin Islands?
Well, Ron, transparency is something that can always be improved, and we needed much more of it. So going forward, the new government has to push transparency. That can come in many forms. We've just talked about a Freedom of Information Act, but the government can also release information to the public, different forms of it. In addition, the House of Assembly is live when it has its regular sittings and sessions, but the committee stage
It's private.
of bills is private. I see no reason why it should not be public. I think people have a right to hear the discussions and debate on bills. It shouldn't simply be something discussed in the back room or off camera. People have a right to see the rationale behind these things and to understand. These are the kinds of things that will give the public more confidence and more understanding of what is happening in government.
Understandable. Well, before we let you go, we know you have quite a busy schedule. What would you say to the public in closing and to the new government?
Well, to the new government, I would say encourage reconciliation. It was a bruising election campaign, and I think to move forward, we have to try to reconcile with each other, between political parties, between different camps. We have to put the election behind us and not hold on to grievances, old ones. The government is now formed. We should get past any misgivings about the government and how it was formed. They are there. There is competence. And so to the public, I say, encourage the government, support them, but keep them accountable. Okay? The people have spoken. We respect the result. The government must govern. The people must hold them accountable. But we should do this in a positive way. We are one people, and we should move forward as such.
Understood. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out, of course, of your busy schedule to have a conversation with us. Welcome back home. Continue to do what you're doing. Viewers, as mentioned, we have been keeping you informed throughout the election process, and this brings almost to an end our various series in making sure that you are keeping up to date on the election process. I want to take this time to thank each and every one of you for your continued support, most importantly for sticking and staying with 284 Media. That's all for now, but be sure to tune in later at 7 p.m. where I bring you the latest in local, regional, and international content. We're 284 News, your source for honest and impartial news. I'm Ron Grant. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.